Hello, Phil Croshaw here, and we're live again. It is the 27th of August, 2020. 31 days of live streaming in August, and we're on day 27. So we're still on track. Bit late again, I'm afraid, today, because it's been really, really busy. But tonight, I'm going to talk to you about podcasting with a particular reference to a checklist, because I've just been on a podcast webinar with a client today, advising them how to set up their podcast for their company. And I'd produced a podcast launch checklist for her, and I thought I'd just share it with you to see what you think. It's going to be a quick one. I know I always say that, and then it never is, but it'll be relatively quick tonight, and we'll crack on as soon as we've done the rule, which is, of course, the intro. Here we go.
I want to be there and baby dance the night away. I let my head down if I want. Don't you just get tired chasing fame and being pretty all the time? Doesn't sound like fun. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. I dare you to be wilder. My shoes off if I want. Let yourself be free and maybe you will find that there is more to life than being pretty. Honey, let's just face it. Baby, let your head down, be a little wilder. Baby, kick your shoes off, you don't have to hide it. Baby, let your head down, be a little wilder. Baby, kick your shoes off, don't hide it. I don't fit into your box, beauty queens without no flaws. You can do better. I dare you to be wilder. I don't feel.
Hello, it's Phil Croshaw again. 31 days of live streaming, and today's the 27th of August. Just like these classic lives, as I always say, anything can happen. And I've just dropped my mouse. It went skating across the floor, and the batteries went flying out as well. So, yeah, really slick, my shows, very professional. Sky TV are very jealous. But that's it. That's how it goes when you go live. And that's part of the fun, really, is anything can happen. So tonight, I'm going to talk about podcasting. And as I said at the start, before the intro, I've been working with a client today on a webinar on helping them set up a podcast. Now, in their particular case, they want a podcast for their business, and they have realized that it's a great way of internal communication. So people think of podcasts and video casts as well as something that's external. So, doing it for marketing reasons, for example, or promotional reasons, or personal brand development reasons. But actually, podcasting is a great way to improve internal communication. Now, part of my career in my corporate days was involved heading up communications, internal communications for Thomas Cook, the travel company. All went downhill after I left, and it was internal communication is often a big challenge, even to the point whereby when you talk to companies about the biggest challenges and the problems that they have, the staff 9 times out of 10 will say communication is the biggest problem, certainly in the top 3 every time. I would suggest. So if you've any questions or comments, then please pop them in the comments section, and I'll try and answer them the best way I can. If you're watching this on catch up, as they say, or if you're watching this as a recorded rather than a live, then anything you ask, I will try and deal with as well. So the launch checklist that I've put together is as follows, and I'm just going to very quickly go through the different elements that I talk to clients about when I'm talking to them about setting up podcasts. So the first thing I say to them, people, is you have to decide on the purpose of the podcast. Who exactly is it for? What will they get out of it? And how will it fit into your business? So just give you an example there of the purpose of the podcast today that the lady was going to be doing was for internal communication improvement. So is it about marketing? Is it about promotion? Is it about selling something, which it could quite easily be? Is it about building personal brand and just being seen and heard? So the purpose of the podcast is the first place to start. Now, I always suggest that customers research similar podcasts for ideas. And it's not difficult, actually, to find podcasts. Just do searches on, nowadays on Google or YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There's numerous different platforms. And just put the topic that you're thinking about doing and do a search for it, and you'll find lots of examples. And don't be frightened of copying, because, that's what everybody does. There's very little that's new. Something I've learned over the years. I read a lot of books, as I mentioned in a previous episode, and it's quite interesting how many things are just twisted slightly or tweaked slightly, but the fundamental thing is the same. I'll tell you where you see it a lot in movies now and television programs. It might be different characters, but the story element is very often the same or extremely similar. So don't be bothered about copying, albeit, of course, don't copy as into the point where you're in breach of any kind of copyright, because that would be just ridiculous. And put your own twist on it, put your own personality on it, of course, if it's yourself. So research similar podcasts for ideas and for similar ideas on topics, which there's a vast array, and it doesn't have to be business related. Of course, quite a few I do are business related, but that's just because that's what I do in my business. So decide on a podcast name is the next bit, and check if there's a domain availability for it. This is assuming you're going to take it to a professional level. So if the domain's available for it, like philspodcastsareus.com, then it's probably worth calling it something where you can get the domain, easy for me to say. However, obviously, it might well be that that you're not going to build a website for it, and it doesn't matter. But if you can do it in such a way where the domain name is available, it's always preferable if you can. The next action is to create the artwork. So usually the artwork means, for example, I suppose the best example of it is going to be a logo. So it's good to have a logo. In this case, I've got Live Streamers Association on top there, which is really, really straightforward. But I've got loads of logos, which I can just show you one or two actually. I have different brands that I use for different reasons. So, for example, let's just bring this up as an example. So I do a show called In the News. And there you can see In the News is a logo in the top right-hand corner. I do another show, which I call Discuss. And you can see there that I've got the logo in the top right. Or I can do it as an overlay. And that's obviously covering my face, which is a great improvement. I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So that's another logo I've done called Discuss as an example. Perhaps one more. Be My Guest. Be My Guest is another thing that I do, and you can see the Be My Guest there, the logo. I've not got any overlays on that, actually, come to think of it. But you get the gist anyway. So, I've got another logo, another alternative logo. So artwork is pretty important, and if you can get some artwork for your logo, do it on yourself. You can do it on things like Canva. You can have it done for you on sites like Fiverr with a double R at the end. And if you're comfortable with it, you can use things like Adobe Photoshop and various other software packages. Then you need to think about recording equipment. Now, this obviously is a show in itself, and people use different equipment depending on what they're doing. So video podcasts obviously involve a camera, surprise, surprise. And audio podcasts might just include an audio recording device on their own. So if we just think of it in terms of the audio only podcast and leave the camera for another day, there's numerous ways you can do it. First of all, you can do it on your phone. And as you probably know, vast majority of smartphones now have got recording devices on them. Or you can get more professional and use something like, believe it or not, and this is actually true, it's a different Zoom, but the company that produced some of the best recording equipment, audio recording equipment, are called Zoom. So you've got something called the Zoom H2N, which is a small device, probably about that big. I've got a Zoom H6, which is a lot bigger, that allows you to plug 4 meaty microphones into it. But people have different types of recorders. Tascam is another type of audio device. So, check that one out as well. Check that make out as well. But the key, of course, without stating the obvious, and I've said this before on this show, is the microphone. Excuse me. And there's lots of different microphones. So again, I'm not going to go into it today, but check out XLR microphones, USB microphones that plug straight into your computer. You can actually record using software on your laptop or on your PC as well. I'm trying to think of the Audacity is the name of the one, and that's free. It's software called Audacity. That sits on your laptop or your PC. And when you click on that, you can actually record, and you can even edit it straight after. And as I say, the great amazing thing about that is that it's completely free. So that's called Audacity. So just think about the microphone and make sure it's a decent quality microphone, because as I've said before on these shows, poor audio is not, people don't usually forgive poor audio. They'll normally switch off if there's poor audio. Then you want to think about, once you've obviously done that, you need to think about downloading the recording, and then thinking about editing software, as I said. So again, Audacity is great editing software. There are other, Adobe do some editing software, but there's various different options and various choices, which I'm not going to cover today, but you need to think about that. And where are you going to actually download the recording to? So then there's the podcasts. If you're doing a series, which in most cases people will be doing a series of podcasts, they won't just be doing the odd one podcast. So plan them out in advance. So if you're going to do a series, think about the content ideas. So it might be, excuse me, it might be something, let's say it's about, your podcast about gardening. So the first one might be about gardening in the winter and plants that are suitable for the winter. Your next podcast then might be suitable plants for the summer. The next one might be putting all sorts of various different trestles up in the garden. The next one could be about building a fountain for your garden. Next one could be talking about decking in the garden. So you get the point. So you end up with a series. Now, people do often ask me, actually, is how often should you be doing an episode? And I think the answer to that is it's down to you. As a guideline, usually I would say at least once a week. Most people who are doing it professionally might do it twice a week. Very few people do it once a day like I'm doing, but I'll tell you now, this is just a one-off 31 days live streaming in August, and it won't, the good news is it will not be 30 days of live streaming in September. I'll strip it back at that point and do it probably once or twice a week. What else? The next thing you got to do is think about potential guests. So obviously you could do a podcast where you're just talking yourself. I call them solo podcasts, where you're just talking yourself into the camera if it's a video podcast, or alternatively, if it's an audio, you'd record it obviously into the microphone or into the recording device that I mentioned. Or alternatively, you can have guests on. And some of you that have been following these shows, and if you've not been, then you might want to check out all the different shows that you'll see. If you're watching this on Facebook, you'll see all the different shows in August are around, or just underneath me here. If you're watching on YouTube, same thing. You'll see all the shows that are actually sitting on YouTube as well. So think about potential guests. If you're going to do guest interviews, as I've said before, is a great way of practicing. It's a great way of podcasting, because then it's not just about you. You've got chat going on, gives some variety to it. So think about the potential guests. And then also think about the record, the intro and the outro. So you'll probably have noticed on this particular show, I have this intro, which I sometimes use as an outro, but it's actually mainly an intro. So in this particular case, I play the intro, which is some music and some logos. And the reason I do that actually on live stream is because I want to give people just the chance to come into the stream. People sometimes say you should do it a lot longer than I do it, because I only do it for a minute. Personally, I think people will get bored to death if you've got it on for 5 minutes or whatever. Think then about music for the podcast. Are you going to do music as an intro? Or are you going to do music as a background? The warning normally, as I've said before, is be careful of copyright issues, because you can get shut down. You can get your videos and or even your channel taken off air by YouTube or Facebook as a result of what they call copyright strikes. So don't just willy-nilly start to play music. You can't just do your own radio show of playing 4-minute tracks of your favorite band. I think you can probably get away with playing very short intros from tracks, because I've done that before now, and I didn't get in trouble for it. So plan and record the first and second episodes. Get those in the can. Make sure you understand what you're going to talk about and how you're going to talk about it. Then you need to think about editing. Are you going to edit it yourself, or are you going to outsource the editing? In other words, are you going to get somebody else to do the editing? As I mentioned earlier, one of the simplest and cheapest software options on the market, or not even on the market, is Audacity, and you can use that to do editing. Or you can go on Fiverr or Freelancer or one of these sites and send the file over to people who do this for a living, and they'll do it for you. In a lot of cases, the audio might not even need editing at all, because as long as you're talking eloquently, and as long as you're talking at a reasonable pace and confidently, and as long as there's no suddenly your guest doesn't start using all sorts of expletives, which might be fine if it's a punk rock podcast, but in most cases profanity isn't usually a good idea. So unless that's happened, you might find that it's absolutely fine in its purest sense. So I do sometimes edit them, or the other time to edit them is if you think it's gone on for a bit longer than you wanted it to, or it's gone on for longer than you actually originally planned. I also say to people about creating show notes. So show notes is maybe the summary of some of the key elements of what's in the show. And I think that show notes are a great thing to do and worth doing. As I say, I'm zipping through these very quickly. So obviously you've got to think about social media, the promotion of the podcast as well. Social media, organic social media, is going to be the cheapest. it's quite probably not the most effective anymore because it's extremely noisy out there, and the algorithms are such that it's highly unlikely you'll get thousands of people listening to it very, very quickly unless it's something really special. So think about that. Obviously, you can use your logo on your social media posts. You can put it actually on, you can have your own Facebook channel, your own Instagram channel in my case, I have Geeky Group as a channel. I have Phil Croshaw as a channel, and so on. So those are probably some of the key elements. I think one of the other areas is to review it and get some feedback on it. You'll not please all the people all the time. That I can assure you. Some people will, it's one of those things where I think there's like a lot in life. It's very, very subjective. And you'll speak to 5 different people. Some will think it's too slow. Some people think it's boring. Other people will think it's professional and confident. Other people will think it's not. So you'll not please all the people all the time. So I always say my advice is usually just do your best. But do get feedback. Ask people, how do you think I could improve it? If I actually was to produce this and put it out there, how might improve it? What might increase your chances of watching it or listening to it in this particular case? I guess the other key thing is to be patient. You will not get thousands of listeners or thousands of viewers overnight. You just won't. In these live streaming episodes, I've been amazed. I've got, like, in some cases, I've got 32, 33 views, but the truth is I'm an unknown. So it's been a lot more on Facebook, but on YouTube, I'm an unknown. It's a brand new channel. So to be getting that sort of view I'm very, very pleased with. And it might go up, it might not do, but that's part of the game. You have to come up with the various different ways of approaching it. And one of my options, if I decide to do it, is paid advertising. So I, as I say, by the end of this month, I'll have 31 live streams that will be available to watch on YouTube and Facebook. So then I might start to promote it more out there, as opposed to just more to friends, family, and business acquaintances that already know me. And I'll take a view on that. I'll take a judgment on that. I'll do some assessment on that. And then, of course, the decision that I'll have to take, like everybody else, is, do I outsource that marketing? And I know a couple of people who do brilliant work in that arena, or do I do it myself? And the smart decision will be to outsource it, because whilst I probably can do it, it's another thing to add to what is already quite a busy schedule that I've got at the moment. I'm pleased to report in these difficult times. So hopefully that's just giving you a bit of food for thought. I've said I'd keep it short, so I think that's what's about 20 minutes or so. So think through. Do you want to do a podcast? Do you want it to be a video podcast? Do you want it to be an audio-only podcast? And it's great fun, and it's a great way of networking and getting to know people. If you're a curious person, some people might say nosy sod, like me, then you'll love it, because you just learn so much. You get so many access to so many insights, and if you like stories, people's stories, and it's just amazing how many stories you hear that blow your mind, of things that have happened to people, journeys that people have gone on. I've mentioned before on this show that I've been fortunate enough to interview some very, very, very successful people over the years. And most of them have their story of challenge and difficulties and really serious, upsetting down times, as it were. So that's perfectly normal, and you get to hear all these stories from people if you interview them. I had the show yesterday with Taz Thornton, and she was talking about getting guests onto your podcast and your video podcast. And we basically said almost at the same time on the show, in parallel to each other, in sync, just ask, and ask nicely, and some will say yes, some will say no, and some will completely ignore you, and some will say yes, but not now, or yes, but I'm really busy, talk to me again in 3 months' time. And in that situation, please, please, please diarize it so that you remember to follow up on it 2 months later, because a lot of people don't. They say, oh, thanks very much, I'll contact you in 2 months' time, and then they never do. So I think that'll do us for tonight. So hopefully some food for thought there in terms of the world of podcasting, video or audio. Just try one thing, just try do one or the other. If you're not happy to see your face on camera, that's called scopophobia. That's normal fear of being on camera. Phonophobia is the fear of hearing your own voice. There are other phobias as well coming to a screen near you. But those sorts of phobias, you do have to overcome those. But they're not difficult to overcome as long as you just do it. And it's very similar in a way to public speaking. You know, lots of people will avoid public speaking as much as they possibly can. But the only people that ever become good at public speaking are those that practice it and those that actually give it a go and then try it again and feel the fear and do it anyway again, and then feel the fear and do it anyway again. And that practice, cliche, but that practice makes perfect. Okay, so that's about it for tonight. Tomorrow, I'm delighted. In the morning, I'm going to be talking to Raj Kundalia about cybercrime. And Raj works for Cyfor, which is all about cybersecurity. Very topical, very relevant right now. And Raj is going to be sharing his insights, information, ideas, and inspiration on tomorrow's show. That's at 10:30 a.m. here on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. And hopefully you'll be able to make that. And if not, as I always say, if you can't make the lives, it's not a problem at all, because these are all available to watch on catch up. So the recorded version of the live stream is stays on the channels for you to watch in your own sweet time. So that's it. That's about it for tonight. And I will see you all tomorrow morning, hopefully bright and early, 10:30 a.m. Here on 31 days of live streaming in August. And I will see you all in the morning. And thank you very much for your time, because I know you're very busy and I know time is precious. So thank you very much for listening to what I've got to say tonight, all about podcasting. Catch you tomorrow. Bye for now.